Welcome back to Mommy Mondays. I'm so excited that we are back.
Me too.
It's been a while, because life been lifing and shit. And yeah, I don't know. I know I had to get a few things in order. What about you?
Yeah, I also had like an unexpected move and that kind of set me back a little. Because when you don't it's unexpected, you don't really plan for it. So yeah.
Oh girl, I already know that. And then with children,
Yeah.
ooh,
It's crazy because it happened to you and then like a couple of months later
yeah,
it was literally the same situation.
yeah.
I was like, how?
That's crazy. Yeah, it's been a ride. Children are growing up and they're expressing themselves. Yeah, sometimes I don't know how to respond to them.
Yes. I know exactly what
Um,
you mean, girl.
I'll tell you about a funny story. This happened like recently. My son was on like FaceTime, whatever, with one of his friends from school. And at one point he started talking to me. I forgot what he was asking me or something. I asked him, I don't know, but we were talking for like 2 seconds. And the friend is like, what were you talking about with your mom? I was listening to you talk. And he said, mind your business. And I looked at him and I said, Tristan. And I said, don't say that to her. And he said, you say it to me all the time. What do I say to that? You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, yeah. I was like, so I won't say it to you anymore if you don't say it to nobody else. And he was like, okay. But it's those kinds of things that they really give you a self-reflection on yourself, because another parent may get upset at them, but it's like, how can I get upset at something that I taught them?
Yeah.
We do these things unconsciously. We just responding. And also from like where we come from too. Like, we're from New York, he's from Cali. Like, it's so, he comes from a softer environment. But
Yeah.
where we come from, it's like, mind your business, ain't nobody talking to you, you know what I mean? Like, that type of thing. And then I realized, like, just certain things we grew up with that were pretty much normalized in the culture that we grew up, because it was a hardcore environment that we had to deal with.
Yeah.
And
And
then
actually, like like my mom, I guess I could say, and like my husband's mom, like when they speak to my daughter and they'll be like, oh, what do you say? She'll be like, oh no, I wasn't talking to you. And they're like, what?
oh
Excuse.
my god, mine too.
And I have to explain to them, like, in reality, yeah, she gets it from me because most of the time I'm having adult conversations and she wants me to repeat something that it wasn't for her. So usually I say like, oh no, baby, I was talking to this person, or
Right.
I wasn't speaking to you, baby, I was talking to her, which in my mind doesn't sound rude or anything because that
Yes.
is what's happening.
Mhm. Mhm.
But when a child says something very similar to what adults say, it kind of comes off as disrespectful, or,
That's so
you're
true.
talking back to me. And, it's not that what we're saying is rude. It's not. I guess it could depend on our tone and stuff.
Mhm.
So something that I've been trying to let my family members know is that I'm not trying to dim their light. I want
Yeah.
them to be natural and I want them to be themselves. And I do realize that Milan is very much like that. Like, she's very honest. She'll let you know if she doesn't like something, or if she's not
Mhm.
talking to you, or if she doesn't want to do something that you're asking her to do, which, as I go back into my childhood, I realized that was suppressed in me. Like, I was like,
Yes.
and so
Yes.
I've been having lots of conversations with my family members lately about how I don't want to dim their light. I want to make sure that they're them, because realistically, there's an example that I use. Like, my children they can talk their way out of anything. Like, very specifically Milan, which is the baby. If
Mhm.
you let her talk, she might con you. Like, so I explained to them, like, I don't ever want to take that away from her because that's a very good skill to have in your life.
Right. Right. That's the thing, is that you. in the like when they go out to the real world, like these little things are needed.
Yes, so I explained to them, like, if she has that little, we use the word tigueraje, it's good. Like, it's good for life. Like, that's how you
Mhm.
protect yourself. That's how you set boundaries. Like, that's how you manage all of that. So I want to make sure that I'm not suppressing any of those natural things in them, because then they're going to have to work on bringing those things back like I had to do. And so that's something that I've been realizing in my children is like, they have sass. Yeah, they have a comeback to almost anything you're gonna say. But I also don't, I want to teach them to be respectful, but to be themselves.
No, I totally agree. I feel like that's been a challenge for me,
Yeah.
with family members as well, because the same things where they'll be like, "No, I wasn't speaking to you. I was speaking to mommy," and they'll take that very like, "Oh, how could you?"
Yeah.
And it's like they're not really, like you said, they're not really saying anything wrong. They aren't talking to you. They're talking to somebody else, and you thought they were talking to you, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
And there's
and
nothing wrong with them not wanting to waste their energy on repeating something that wasn't for
yeah,
you.
no, 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 totally. Hold on one second. Sorry, I was getting a message. But yeah, and then it's also like I'm a firm believer that, you know, there's a society right now that has like, how can I say, it's like they dehumanize children.
Yeah.
So it becomes where when children, like you said, do the things that adults do, it comes across as disrespectful and things like that. But if we would just let children just be and stop trying to control them and suppress their emotions by not, saying how they feel, because these are ages where they're gonna ask a million and one questions. They're gonna be curious about things. And then as adults, because we have the stresses of life, we get annoyed with that,
Yeah.
especially, the old fashioned way of raising children, which I think for the most part, a lot of us that grew up in that last generation, I would say, meaning our parents, most of us have suppressed emotions. And we're these adults that are still children trying to just say how we feel or scared to say how we feel.
Yes.
And then we go into a healing journey. That why do you think most of us are trying to heal from that? We're trying to heal that inner child that was scared to talk, that couldn't talk, that just all these things. And then when we do express ourselves as adults, because we weren't allowed to as children, that's where we have this emotional immaturity,
Yes.
a lot of us. And it's like the truth is that a children should be whining and complaining, right? That's what they're supposed to do, right? Because that's going to allow them to express those emotions and feel so they're able to let them out. And then afterwards you kind of just teach them how to not control necessarily, but how to feel and move forward, you know what I mean, in the best way, like learn from something, or as like we always say, use your emotions as a guidance system. But what I was going to say was, excuse me, when we look at adults, we're doing the same thing that children are doing. We're catching tantrums,
Yeah.
right?
In a
We're
different way, but
in a
yeah.
different way, right? We're whining, we're complaining. When you're crying, does someone ever say to you like, stop, shut up and stop crying? Your friend would never say that to you. Like if I called you crying, Denisha, you would not tell me stop crying.
Hmm.
You would just
I
listen
would.
to me.
Yes.
You would be like, it's okay, don't worry, right? But when we children, because again, the stresses of life, we hear them cry and then we're triggered.
Yeah.
And then we're like, stop crying, stop crying. But we would never say that to an adult. But technically, as an adult, it would make more sense to say that to an adult as opposed to a child, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But I
But go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, 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 I want you to go. Go ahead, go ahead.
Because I was gonna say, like, sometimes there are adults that are like that. Like, when I
Yes.
used to talk to, like, I couldn't cry. Like, after a certain age, I just wouldn't cry anymore. I was so traumatized from getting like hit and all this stuff that
Mhm.
I was quote unquote so strong that I wouldn't
Right.
cry. In reality, I lost my ability to share my emotion and
Yes.
express it. So it was getting bottled up.
Yep.
And so when this new person came, like as soon as I became a mother from Enzo, the next day, I feel like I unlocked the portal of that, like where I was able to cry again and feel my emotions.
Mm,
And I was obviously caught on guard with this off guard with this new person that I had just become. And it's not really my new person. I had just become myself even more. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
you were
when
going
I
back to
would,
your body.
yes, and when I would come across adults and I would cry, honestly, and a lot of people might not get this, but I got so many people that were like, "You always cry."
Oh my goodness.
And it was like I was so taken aback because I couldn't, like, I was like, really? Like, how do you not feel compassion for someone that is like crying and sharing emotions with you? But then I realized that they're triggered by that.
Yes.
And it's because they probably lost their ability to cry and be
Mm-hmm.
open about their emotions or their feelings also.
Yep.
And so I have come across adults that as soon as they see my eyes water, they suck their teeth and like, oh, here we go again. Like, that's why I don't like talking to you. Everything is like a big deal.
Goodness.
Everything is just so deep. And I'm like, bitch, you know I'm a Scorpio by now. Like, yes, everything is deep.
And I think that's
But
the biggest challenge too. Like when, you're trying to raise your children, and yes, you need a village, but like I always say, you need a healed village.
yeah.
Because if you
So
have a bunch of people in your village who have an old school way of thinking and are also emotionally reacting traumatically by their own inner child that's still wounded, they're gonna try to bring that across with your children.
mhm. Yeah. And like one thing I like to teach Enzo about emotions because his emotions are really big. Like he really
Ooh, that's Tristan.
feels. And it might be like Tristan's a Leo, right? It might be a Leo thing.
Oh yeah.
They hide it. You know, like they don't wanna
No,
show.
he's a cancer. He's a cancer
Oh,
sign.
okay, okay. Because
Yeah, same. Yeah.
but Enzo is like he feels a lot of shame and he feels a lot of guilt once because he's very like righteous. He's very
Mm,
moral. He's very like I he just came like that. It's so crazy. Um but he doesn't like he's not about disrespect, like not towards himself or anybody. So when he does do something, it really hurts him to see himself in that way. So recently I've been trying to teach him about his emotions and how they are waves. And that's what we like to call them. Like it's a wave
yeah.
of emotion and it's going to happen, but you can't let the waves control you. You have to learn to ride the waves of what you're feeling.
Yes.
And the reason I do this is because I don't care if Enzo cries. You want to cry? Go ahead and cry.
Yep.
But his dad doesn't quite feel the same about that. And I understand. But I also know that he does need to find a form a way to release all of that. So I'm trying to teach him
Yeah.
how to emotionally control what he's feeling.
Right.
And one of the things we talk about is being in your brain or being in your heart.
Mm,
And so I explained to him, hey, when daddy talks to you, be in your brain. Listen to the words that your father is using so
yeah.
that your emotions don't take over the
Mm,
definition of what he's trying to tell you, the
right.
message, because your emotions can do that to you. You
Yeah.
know, because it's hard for a young boy that respects his father. His father talks to him in a firm tone. You know that can scare him, or shake him up. So I have to
Yeah.
teach him to separate the two because he also doesn't need to be a crybaby. Like there's a lot of things that we can build emotional intellect for that we don't, it doesn't
Yeah. It's just the
necessarily
emotional
always,
maturity that we didn't get.
yes, it doesn't necessarily always have to come out in a cry. You can let it out with physical exercise, journaling, um
Mm-hmm.
so many other outlets, which is crazy because this is something that I'm learning. Because again, I told you everyone was super overwhelmed with me, like I'm now a crybaby, you know what I mean? Which I was the complete opposite for. But the type of person I am, I don't care. But I also want to hold conversations with people where I'm not crying over everything. So the
Right.
same things that the way that I'm dealing with my emotions, I'm going off and trying to explain to him, this is the way that I'm learning to deal with it. It might be able to help you as well. And he's been doing really well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have that with Tristan a lot, and Tristan will ask me like 20,000 questions, and sometimes I get upset at myself that I'm in sometimes just an overwhelmed state just with work and different things and trying to meet deadlines,
Mhm.
and then I'll snap at him real quick, and I can tell, like, when you can tell when, like, you've made your children feel bad, like,
Yeah.
you can see it in their eyes, and like him and the girls too, like, they will give me this look, and my heart, I will be like, like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm so sorry, because it's like, I know that because they'll be in their emotions afterwards. And one thing that I don't know if your children do this, but they'll always ask me, you don't love me no more. Like, if I'll either get upset that they did something they weren't supposed to do real quick, and I'll reprimand them, or things like that, like this, that I'll get overwhelmed, and I'll snap real quick. And I'm always like, did I do something for them to think about that emotionally? You know what I mean? Or did I ever say something? And I'll constantly remind them, like, no, I love you no matter what, like Tristan knows, like, Tristan be like, well, you love me no matter what, so I'll just leave you alone. Like, he won't.
You've gotten the point by now.
Yeah, he's starting to get it, but the girls will continue to say that. So I think about, like, just their emotions, like things that I don't think our parents had the time to really process or think about. But we're raising, we're consciously parenting, let me say.
Yeah.
So we're constantly being aware of our children's emotions, and what we're doing to affect them, whether it be negative, positively, whatever it is. um and then, as you're teaching them, you're also teaching yourself how to handle certain situations too, because, like I said, as adults, most of us are emotionally immature. And I think, as I'm trying to teach my children how to have a healthy relationship with their emotions, so this way they grow up to be emotionally mature adults, I'm also learning things about myself, that I'll catch myself in in how I express myself, how I say things to them. And then, just like I said, like the example when we started, I say mind your business, but I'm like, most of the time it's like I'm doing something and he'll just be, and I'm like, ain't nobody talking to you, mind your business. I'm not doing it in an aggressive way, but when he said it, it sounded so aggressive to
Yeah.
to the younger. It's so it makes you realize that you don't really hear yourself.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't hear yourself until someone else, and this is what children do all the time. Like I said, it's a self-reflection. You will hear that probably to the outside world, it does sound aggressive, and probably to him too.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it doesn't, but he doesn't, or maybe he doesn't see it as aggressive, but when he's expressing it to somebody else, it does sound like rude and aggressive, like mind your business. Like, and I'm just like, okay, there's certain things that I have to teach him on, because he's not saying it in an aggressive way at all, and in no way. He's just saying it how he hears it.
Yeah.
Because children do what you say. I mean, they say what you say, and they do what you do.
Yeah.
um, they don't, do what you say. Like, to that, they, whatever you say, they're gonna say it that way. The way all the stuff is just a little copycat, real quick. Downloading information, like, oh, if somebody asks me a question and it has nothing to do with them, I'm gonna tell them mind their business. Now, when you get to the real world, yeah, you know,
Yeah.
you are going to tell some people mind your business, and you're going to mind your own business, because you're going to learn that you don't get into other people's business. But I have to also learn how I'm expressing myself and my emotions, good or bad, because sometimes we're saying things so innocently, like I said, that comes from our culture of where we grew up at. And we have to realize that, for the most part, the rest of the world, because when you look at where you grew up at, you're like a little speck,
Mhm.
compared to the rest of the world. And I've learned, even living in Cali, and then when you travel to other places, you realize we grew up in a very, very aggressive environment, because we grew up in a survival environment. So when you go into the real world, not everybody's in a survival environment. Not everybody's in fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
So they're just like, yo, why are y'all so, like, extra? It comes across as extra,
Yeah.
And then the things that I do with my children, I notice that the most, I'll be like, damn, I don't want them to be there. They're so gentle, like,
Yeah.
I want them to have that rough little side, but I'm trying to find the balance on how to teach that, without them coming up like, coming across like little assholes to people, because it feels like a lot of people, well, not a lot, but certain people do think that, they're disrespectful or rude. And I'm like, no, they're just they're
Honest.
just honest. And then it's like you gotta think about, like, I remember there was a situation too where somebody was telling me something in relation to what my son had did, but they were saying it in front of him and he went to defend himself. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
But other people will, I remember there was a time, I don't know if I've shared this before. Um, and I know that I've gotten this from my dad, like that type of way of raising where I'm not just gonna snap at my child when somebody says something. I'm gonna listen to them and then I'm gonna listen to my child. And then if we all need to get together, we'll get together, or it can be resolved individually, right?
Yes.
And I got that from my dad because one thing about my dad was like, if somebody was like, oh, your daughter did so and so, my mom was the type to just spaz and just hit me. No questions. Just,
Yeah.
how dare you? Don't you disrespect nobody? La, 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 la. My dad would be like, wait, 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 what happened? Like, he would want to hear my side of the story, And I
Yeah.
think that's so important. And I'm really grateful that my dad was like that. And there was a lady I remember who she was babysitting me, and her daughter had spilled milk and she told me to clean it. And I said no, because I didn't do that.
Yeah.
So I said, no. She's like, you better clean it, something, something. And basically, like, if I don't clean it, she's gonna hit me. I was like, you can't hit me. You're not my mom or my dad. And she's like, you better clean it, da da da, or I'm gonna hit you. I said, if you hit me, I'm going to hit you back.
Warning.
Like, FYI, bitch. So mind you, I'm probably like about maybe 8, 9. Okay. And
Mhm.
so when my dad picks me up, of course, your daughter da 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 in Spanish is so disrespectful, yada yada yada. My dad's like, okay, 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 okay. What happened? So he talks to the lady. I'm there just ready, pissed, about to be like, no, let me tell you what happened.
Mhm.
My dad's like, cállate, cállate. So he lets the lady talk. My dad's like, okay. We walking back home. My dad's like, what happened? So I told him, I'm like, she said she was gonna hit me if I didn't like, clean up her daughter's spilled milk. And I said, if you hit me, I'm gonna hit you back because she can't hit me. She's not my mother, my father. And he was like, oh, all right then. So this is what we're gonna do. My dad went. We went to the key shop. He made a copy of a key. And he said, now you're going to stay home by yourself and you're not going to have a babysitter. And here are the rules. Don't open the door for nobody. And I'll be home at 4 o'clock. So when you get home from school, get inside that house and close that door. Okay. And that was the end of me having a babysitter. I didn't get in trouble. I didn't, because this adult disrespected me.
Yeah.
And it's like, you are capable of disrespecting a child if you're an adult. I want people to know that.
Yeah.
They do not dehumanize them. They feel too, and they gonna defend themselves too. So it's just a matter of teaching them how to do these things. But when they do it off the rip, that's just them being in their natural state and expressing it
Exactly.
in whatever way they were taught how, by seeing the environment around them.
Yes. And I also like there's a lot of things that just were in like imprinted in us since we were children as well, because that's what we did. Like we didn't like do as we were told. We
Yeah.
copied what we saw
Yep.
and we repeated what we heard.
Yep.
So like growing up and like, well, after having my children and like trying to like raise them and stuff, I was threatened by physical hits, like, oh, I'm gonna hit you if you don't do this, or I'm gonna hit you if you don't do
Yep. Me
that.
too.
And honestly, that was, I guess, a way of managing me in that time, because my mom, it was just me and my mom. And
Hmm.
my sister came after, but it was just us girls. So I guess for her, it was just easier to manage me if she physically, scared
Right.
which is fair because I get it.
Right.
I,
Under the
I know who I
circumstances.
was.
Right.
So a lot of the phrases that like our parents say, I can say we can, whether you're like Dominican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, like they're very similar and they're
Yeah.
automatic. Like I
Mhm.
remember my mom would say, coño, yo no sé lo que yo he hecho en esta vida para merecerme una vida así. And I could say that to other people and they'll be like, oh my God, my mom used to say the same thing. Or they'll be like, cállate, o te rompo la boca. Like
Yep.
all these different things that like,
Yep.
it's crazy, but they all say it. So
Yeah.
it's like, if we really think back, where do those things come from and why do we keep repeating them? And like,
Yeah.
I got a small lesson of that because one time my daughter said something or did something, I forgot what it was. And then I think it was Mila. And I said, oh, you do that again. Y yo te rompo la boca. I said in Spanish, right?
Mhm.
I left her in like a very pondering way. 'Cause she was like, what? And she was just thinking, right? And when we get home, I guess she finally figured out what she was thinking. And she goes, Mom, I have a question. And I was like, what? She's like, doesn't rompe la boca mean break your mouth? She was like, you're gonna break my mouth? She's like, how you gonna do that? And I'm like, it's so literal. It's so literal to them. Like that I'm like, okay, wait. I'm first of all, I'm sorry. I don't know why I said that. Because I'm not gonna do that. But I was like, baby, I'm sorry I said that. I was like, I just said it. I don't know. And I really didn't think about it before I said it, which is crazy because I always tell you guys, think before you
Think
speak. So
before, yep.
you're not saying things, So I was like, I'm really sorry. In that moment, like that's what my mom used to say to me. So it just came out. And I was like, I'm gonna really think before I tell you guys things because of that, because it's true. Like I would be like, oh, pick this stuff up or te voy a dar una pela, knowing damn well that I'm not gonna do that.
Yo, yeah. Yeah. Oh
So
my
it's
God.
like they keep breaking the rules and then I don't know what to do. This was in the beginning. Like, so
Yeah.
I'm like, what am I saying? My words don't match my actions. So what am I teaching them?
Yep.
I had to really reflect back, like, all right, calm down and just regather, regroup.
Yeah, there was one time, I forgot what Tristan did, and I said, "Stop playing with me." He's like, "I'm not playing," and I'm like, "I'm not playing with you. Stop playing." He's like, "What?" He's like, "But I'm not playing with you." He's like, "What am I playing?" And I'm like,
Oh.
"What do you mean, like playing?" He's like, "But you're not playing with me. What do you mean?"
Oh my God.
I'm like, "Oh my goodness, they take everything so literal."
Serious and literal. And it's funny because I would look at my mom like so confused. Like, what? And then she'll be like, why are you looking at me like that? Don't look at me like that. And I'm like, I don't even know what's happening. Like, do I stand here? Do I do what you're telling me to do? Like, I'm just in a frozen state. Like, I don't even know what's going on. So, like, when my kids used to, I used to get so triggered because I'm like, yo, stop staring at me. And like, I'm talking to you, do what I'm telling you to do. But it's like, I had to reflect back at myself and be like, yo, but when my mom was yelling like that, I didn't really know what to do.
Yeah.
And so it's that cycle and we got to learn to break those cycles of doing the same things. It doesn't mean that everything our parents did were wrong. No, you can take all
Right.
the good stuff that worked, but you really got to think about what were the things that they were doing and why, and were they surviving, were they thriving, were they suffering? Like we got to take all these things into consideration because it's not so black and white. There are so many different cases that can change everything.
No, yeah. And that's the thing is that like I said, most of us, like me and you, are consciously parenting. So we're noticing these, certain kind of just toxic patterns, that maybe we've unconsciously taken on, but then through our healing, we're like, wait a minute, now that I hear myself, this don't sound too good, and I don't want to repeat this. And then you got to, like you said, you think about what state were they being raised in. And that's what, like I said, we grew up in a lot of survival mode, and that was us. Now imagine our parents, the survival mode that they grew up in, because they had it way harder than us,
Mm.
you know? Um, and then you look at our children, and the truth is that we've taken them, like we've completely shifted things, and we've taken them into such a much more peaceful environment and upbringing, and the fact that we're allowing them to be themselves, we're allowing them to express themselves, we're allowing them to explore, to be curious, and we're just giving this little tools of guidance, like that's cool, but try maybe this way, or say it like this, or maybe this will be better. And then we also do that by changing ourselves and saying, like I told my son today, I will not say that to you anymore. Since it came from me, then I'm the root. Let's fix the root. And then since you're not going to hear me say it to you no more, then you shouldn't be saying it to anybody else. Right. So he's going to be aware of that.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to raise your children pretty much in sync to what their environment is. Like I said, I'm trying to remove a lot of the aggressiveness that's unnecessary right now. Now, when they get into the real world and then they go out into life and they get older, I think that they will be a better, how like us, it was more rebel of like, no, now that I'm at whatever, I'm gonna go do what I want to do. I
Yes.
think there will be less of that with children, the way we're raising them, because we're not hiding anything and we're not suppressing anything.
Yes.
So they will feel safe in our direction, in our guidance at that age, because they've always had that safetyness. Like, I think, okay, yeah, you can have a little bit of fear, you know what I mean? But I
Yeah.
think the fear that a lot of us grew up in from our parents was just a little too much. And that's because they were surviving.
Yeah.
They came from different countries, they migrated here, and they were like, we cannot fail,
And they were
and even,
fighting real
go
wars.
ahead.
I say they were fighting real wars.
Yeah, that, and it was like it was survival of the fittest. So yeah, sometimes that meant they were working all day, or they were out all day and they weren't with us, and we had to fend for ourselves. Some children that had to be, just be by themselves in the house, you know what I mean? Like, here are the rules, follow them, you know what I mean? Here's how
Yes.
to make cereal, here's how to make yourself a toast, here's how to make it like,
Yeah.
you will
And
be okay.
it's crazy because in reality what we want is, or what we don't get is that our generation is still healing from the trauma,
Yes.
all of that. So I know that, or not a lot of parents know, but everyone should know your parenting, it's never gonna be perfect. Like, let's keep it
No.
real because we're all humans. So
Yep.
what we really want to do is not really thrive for perfection because that's impossible,
Yep.
but what we can thrive for is it's a type of lifestyle that they don't have to heal from.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that gets created when the parent can be accountable, hold
Yep.
themselves accountable, and give themselves grace. Like, I feel like those are the
Yeah.
two main components, because once you can do that for your parents, once you can realize that they did what they could with what they had, and they actually did
Yep.
a lot with what they had, then we can kind of reflect over onto us and not be so hard on ourselves and realize, okay, let's shed all the stuff that was unnecessary, and let's bring on all the actual skills that our parents taught us, even though they were surviving,
Yeah, I
you
agree.
know? And so, with accountability and like giving ourselves grace, we can get to that place where we understand, like, because I feel like, you ever seen uh, that a reel that's like, oh, when you eat healthy and then it's like being a crunchy mom, and they're eating something and they're like, oh, this is gonna kill me, like this is gonna kill me, this is so bad for me, like while you're eating it.
Yeah.
And it's like understanding that, like, we lived off of like Lunchables and cereal and like
Yeah.
doctor's appointments and like all this stuff. Like, we don't have to go to the extreme. We don't have to be
Yeah.
there because we're here and we did all of that. And we didn't only do it, we lived it to the max. Like,
We
every time
did.
I got money, I was going to the store to get candy.
Yeah.
Like, as a young adult, I was still going and spending my money on candy and fast food. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I had my children that my life started to change. So I do say that giving yourself that grace and seeing like, yo, I'm still alive and I did
Yeah.
all that stuff. Like, and I'm still, and I could still be conscious and connected to God. Like, there is no, oh, it's too late until someone's dead. So if we're all alive, we still got the chance to work on all those things. So just understanding, like, oh damn, today wasn't a great day, I yelled at the kids. Like, okay, well, did you apologize for it?
Oh,
Are you
that
planning
part.
on doing it again? Are you gonna repeat this? Is it gonna be a cycle, or are you just gonna stop it dead in its tracks and then you're off to deal with something else? Because there's always gonna be
There's
something.
always going to be something. Yeah. There's
Yeah,
always going to be something.
so
I
it's
think
so
the
important.
apology thing, I think that's so important. And sometimes I'm like, I feel like I'm always apologizing, but you know what? I'm teaching them accountability. I'm not, you know, saying this was okay or no, I'm saying that that wasn't cool. Or I'm even just saying, listen, I've had a rough day and it has nothing to do with y'all. And my bad that I took it out on y'all, but y'all ain't got nothing to do with nothing.
Yeah.
You know, on whatever happened today. You know what I mean? Like I was just overwhelmed. Oh, what did I knock down? I was just overwhelmed. And I just think that's important. I think what we're doing is healthy. And like you said, the grace part, because you don't realize that if there was like a scale, you know, we have literally tipped that fucking shit over with the amount of incredible things we are doing with these children that will literally set them up for life, because we are molding these very important ages that will determine the type of adults they're going to be. And you know, from what it sounds like to me, they're going to be people who are going to be compassionate to others, respectful to others, you know, but they're also going to be authentically themselves and honest.
Yeah. And that a crazy thing that happens when you homeschool your children is something called intergenerational socializing.
Mm,
And a lot of people are not aware of this, but this is why children are annoying. Or I don't think children are annoying, but why other people that don't have children think children are annoying.
yeah.
And the reason I feel this is just I want to say my opinion. I don't want anybody out there like barking at me over statistics or whatever, which I'm pretty sure I could find anyways to back it up. But we'll go with this is my opinion for now, right? You take a child, right? And let's say a child, where in the world do you take a child where there is only children? It's literally only school,
Yeah.
maybe the park.
Yeah.
That's about it. Everywhere else, they have to be around different generations of people,
That is so true.
babies, adults, older people, even
Hmm.
children that are older or younger, depending on their age. So
Right.
it's like as when I when people see my children, they don't know. They obviously don't know that they're homeschooled. When they find out, they're so shocked that it's it's funny to see their expression because my children are social, and that's a result of them being at home. And when they're
Yes.
home, they get to interact with all the generations of your family. So
Yes.
grandparents, younger babies, adults, uh, even older children like teenagers or preteens or young adults. They get to meet or and spend time with all these different types of people because that's who you're around, you know? So when they're like that, they get to learn to be and interact with people of different ages, which I feel like is so important because you
I
just never
agree.
know. Like even if you gotta go somewhere, like you can't, there's no place where there's gonna be a bunch of children for you to entertain your child. That
Yeah.
doesn't exist. So we put them in school and oh to quote unquote socialize, but who are they really socializing with? It's just other children their exact same age,
Yeah.
which is insane if you really think about it because they don't really learn to socialize with other people. And that's why children get very anxious when they're in situations like restaurants, like doctor's appointments, like museums or parks or whatever. Like there's so many situations where you could have your child where they want to just play
Yeah. No,
and
yeah.
actually
I went to Trader Joe's recently, and I was by myself with all three of them. So I have one in the cart, Celeste, and then the other two just in the side, whatever, helping me. And then when we get to the register, when I tell you that this lady was having like a full blown conversation with Tristan, Kaylani, and Celeste, like if they were friends for a long time. And I'm just hearing them just, you know, continue their conversations. They're talking about food. They're talking about a bunch of things. And when we're leaving, the lady was like, "Your children." She was like, "That was an awesome conversation." Like, but and it's funny because then at the dentist, I was at a dentist recently, and the lady, we were just talking, and she's like, I said, "No, my children are homeschooled." And she was asking me, I'm like, "Yeah, I work from home. My children are homeschooled." And then the first thing they always ask is, "Aren't you concerned about the social aspect?"
The first,
And I
yeah,
told her, I said, "Actually, I'm not." I said, "Because when you put your children in a public school or in a school, whatever, I'm like, you really don't know what type of children your children are socializing with. You have no idea what the parents are indoctrinating them with or teaching them or whatever the case is, right? Everybody's being programmed to something. I don't know what these kids are being programmed to. I don't know how they're being spoken to. So there's just too much of a window there where I don't know. When I'm homeschooling, I am very much aware of the children my children socialize with because I'm the one that's connecting with these parents. I know what type of parents they have. I know what type of environment the children are being raised in. I know that we're under the same vibration when it comes to how we want to raise our children and certain things we don't want our children watching or doing or playing. You know what I mean? With I'm on the same page, so I'm not as worried. I'm actually feel more secure because when they do have that time with the children, with children, I'm not worried about, oh man, this kid may, you know what I mean, tell
yeah,
my son some wild stuff, or my daughter. Like, I'm not worried about these things. Where when you're in a public setting with, as far as school, this is how a lot of these children come back home and they're like, "Yo, who is this child? This is not my child." Because
mhm,
they're copying everything else they're seeing. They're also copying the disciplinary people that are around them, right? The teachers and how the teachers are responding to them. And we all know these teachers are so stressed out because they are not giving the proper environment and tools to nurture these children correctly. So, and like you said, my children also speak to adults constantly and they have like full-blown conversations. So they're able to have a range of social I don't know what to call it, but they're able to socialize, like you said, generationally with people.
yeah,
So it's like, actually, no, this is actually fantastic compared to what society always that's the first thing society always downplays, and that's the social aspect, when I feel the schools are also, like we've been talking about, are suppressing these children.
mhm.
They
They
can't go to the bathroom when, right? No, can't go to the bathroom yet. You gotta wait your turn, right?
gotta eat at the
You
same
gotta
time
eat at a certain same time. Um,
and the same food because the school
think,
I was going to, they had the
yes,
food. I was like, I pack him his lunch. They were like, no, we're trying to be blah blah blah. I'm like, nah, bro.
like we get on that.
I'm not feeling this.
But and it's like everywhere you turn, if you think about it, like you look at the schools, you look at old school ways of parenting, you look at unhealed villages that we have in our families, and they're all doing the same thing, and that is suppressing children's emotions and, like I said, dehumanizing them.
And
And
about the humanizing thing, um, like we need to realize too that obviously adults are not perfect, and you don't know what adult in what mood is going to come across your child and say something to them that
yeah.
will stay with them forever because
Oh,
they didn't
yeah.
share with it with anybody because they didn't, and this was like I've heard so many cases of children that have been like, oh yeah, this one teacher used to tell me like that I was basically dumb or used to shame me in class because I didn't know things.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying all, obviously not all teachers are like that. Most teachers want, like obviously they became teachers because there's no good pay. So they obviously became
Right.
teachers because they like children, I'm guessing. But at the same time, like they're humans. Like you have no idea what they're going through.
It's
I
so
remember
true.
in high school there was a lady that went through a divorce and like she bugged out after that divorce. This lady was crazy, the things she was telling us in class. Like it was just wild,
Wow.
and you can't take that back once it's done. Like you can't, like once a child hears something, you gotta let them make their own conclusions. I certainly, yeah, you can influence, but they're their own mind and they're gonna make of that whatever they're gonna make of it. And sometimes the children's mind are not ready for a certain type of information. And once it's in there, that's it. That
Yeah.
ship has been sailed.
Yeah. Yep. 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 On that note, we gonna have to close out right now. Mommy got to tend to the babies and the hubby. You know how it goes, but this was awesome. I love, I miss this interaction. I don't think I ever realized how therapeutic it was until we stopped doing it
I know. I was
and
gonna
the
tell you,
break we took.
it felt like I needed it.
Right? Yeah. It's a beautiful like just way to just express ourselves and just talk about like just a passionate topic that we're always very passionate about, and that's children and that's healing and motherhood, and that's what this podcast is about. So I'm super excited that we are back, and anyone who is going to listen to this, thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us again. And stay tuned. We got a bunch of awesome episodes coming up, awesome topics, awesome guests. We are back, season 2, Mommy Mondays. Thank you for joining us.